Our fuselage is one modular system. It's interchangeable and future-proof, meaning it will always be backwards compatible. It's important to note that any fuselage will work with any mast, front wing or stabilizer in our entire range. Oli, tell me, what are the different lengths and how do they affect the performance of the foils?
So we have a 600mm fuselage and a 700mm fuselage. So obviously the longer the fuselage is, the further away is the stabilizer from the front wing, which means it creates pitch stability. A longer fuselage will ultimately create more pitch stability than a shorter fuselage.
And that means it's more forgiving, I guess.
It is more forgiving, and especially when you're a novice, you go for the longer fuselage because it makes it just so much more easier for you. If you're a little bit advanced, you actually want to be a little bit more pitch sensitive because it allows you to make tricks, maneuvers, especially when it comes to freestyle, or when you go surfing, prone surfing or wing surfing in the waves. A shorter fuselage gives you just more freedom for tighter turns.
And how are the alloy and the carbon interchangeable?
All our fuselages feature the same mast connection, regardless whether it's an aluminium fuselage or a carbon fuselage. The front wing connection is also the same, the stabilizer connection is also the same. They are all interchangeable. Any mast, be it a carbon mast or an aluminium mast, will fit any of the fuselages.
So what's the difference between alloy and carbon fuselages?
So the aluminium fuselage is a CNC machined to a hydrodynamically optimized shape. Obviously, being alloy is a solid alloy construction, which means it's very rigid. In comparison to the carbon fuselage, here we have a composite construction where we have a foam core in the middle and a carbon prepreg wrap on the outside. This gives us a 40% weight saving of the carbon fuselage over the aluminium fuselage. Geoloc is our load-bearing connection between fuselage and the mast. We have here a geometry locking connection, meaning we have a tapered shape on the mast and a tapered shape on the fuselage. When these come together, you will have two screws at the bottom to pull both together. What's happening here is that any load transfer from the mast to the fuselage will not get transferred over those two screws. It will get transferred over the outer geometry of the mast into the fuselage. And this gives us a very, very rigid connection compared to other fuselages on the market. Some mast to fuselage connections on the market simply rely just on the screw connection. As you can see, if you just place the mast over the fuselage and bolt that together, that will not give you a very stiff connection. Or also if you just continue the same shape in parallel of the mast and insert that in the fuselage, also that over time will open up and lose. So what we created here with a tapered fit on both sides, the mast and the fuselage, we are squeezing the geometry together and we always guarantee a tight fit.
The benefit of the Geoloc is definitely, if you ever get a chance, flip your foil upside down so you can put weight on either side of your wing and you'll really feel how rigid and how stiff that connection is in comparison to others. Oli, why is the stiff connection so important?
Yeah, if you had your front wing attached to the fuselage here and you wiggle left to right, you will see the mast flexing. You do the same this direction, you see the torsion of the mast. Now, your mast, or you give a steering impulse when you're foiling. That steering impulse will get transferred into the board, from the board into the mast to the foil, and will do the movement. If this is all, let's say, sluggish and not that stiff, you will get a delay in the response that you will get. It's basically driving a car with worn out suspension. You want to have a crisp feeling, you want to have that your steering impulse that you give directly get transferred to the foil to engage your movements.
You don't want a floppy noodle, you want something that's really stiff and responsive.
Yeah.
What are the key areas that you can lose some of that responsiveness?
Any connection details on the whole foil system are weak points. They're like hinge points. That's how we as engineers consider them. Your mast to board connection needs to be rigid. The lower portion of the mast where it connects to the board needs to be rigid, so that's why we have the tulip shape here. And then the next part is the fuselage to mast connection. If you treat all of them with the most care and really acknowledge that these are weak spots that are important in the design and engineering to look after, then you achieve a mast that is coming fairly close to being a solid one-piece design. And that is what we are after, because that ultimately gives you the best performance.